My mother spent 12 years telling everyone that I ran away because I was selfish. She said I abandoned my little brother, broke my grandmother's heart, and disappeared without looking back. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering, she repeated the same story until it became the truth everyone believed. But at my grandmother's funeral, one trembling voice stood up in front of everyone and destroyed the lie she'd built for over a decade. If you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, or watched someone rewrite your entire life while everyone believed them, you're going to feel this story. Subscribe if you love revenge stories where patience wins in the end. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Audrey Collins. I'm 26 years old now, and for almost half my life I existed as a ghost inside my own family. Not dead, not missing, just erased. If you asked anyone in my hometown about me, they'd all tell you the same thing. Oh, Audrey? She ran away when she was 14. Poor Linda. Imagine raising a daughter who just abandons her family. I heard she stole money before she left. My cousin said she never even called her grandmother. Everyone knew the story. No one knew the truth. I grew up in a small Ohio town where everyone knew everyone else's business before breakfast. Secrets didn't stay secrets. Rumors became facts overnight. My mother, Linda Collins, understood that better than anyone. She knew if she spoke first. She controlled the narrative forever. Growing up, I thought all mothers yelled. I thought all mothers slammed cabinet doors so hard the dishes rattled. I thought everyone walked on eggshells inside their own house. I didn't know other kids weren't terrified of hearing a car pull into the driveway. Dad died when I was 6. Heart attack. Sudden. After that. Something inside Mom changed. Or maybe it had always been there. There were no hugs anymore. No bedtime stories. Only rules. Perfect grades. Perfect chores. Perfect silence. Nothing I ever did was enough. If I got 98 on a test. She wanted 100. If I cleaned the kitchen. She'd point to fingerprints on the microwave. If I smiled too much. She'd accuse me of pretending. You think life is supposed to be easy? She'd snap. No. Then stop acting like a princess. I stopped smiling around age 9. Grandma Evelyn was different. She smelled like lavender and cinnamon. Her house always had music playing softly through an old radio. She never yelled. Whenever Mom dropped me off there, I could breathe. Grandma would brush my hair and say, "You're safe here." 3 words. Just 3. But they became the only place in the world where my shoulders relaxed. Mom hated that. "Don't fill her head with nonsense," she'd tell Grandma. "She needs discipline." Grandma always answered calmly, "Children need love first." Mom would roll her eyes. "That's why she's so weak." Weak. That became my label. Everything I did proved I was weak. Crying. Weak. Being scared. Weak. Getting sick. Weak. Wanting affection. Weak. Eventually, I started believing it. When I turned 12, my little brother Noah was born. Everything changed overnight. Mom suddenly became the mother I'd always wanted. She smiled, laughed, read bedtime stories. She bought Noah toys she would have called wasteful if I'd asked. Watching that was worse than any screaming, because it meant she knew how to love. She just hadn't chosen me. I remember standing outside Noah's bedroom one night. Mom was humming while rocking him to sleep. I'd never heard her sing before. Not once. I stood there listening through the cracked door until she noticed me. "What are you staring at?" "I. You'll wake him. I just wanted." "Go to your room." The door slammed. I remember touching the wood after it closed, wondering what was wrong with me. Why was I the version of her child she couldn't love? School became my escape. Teachers liked me, friends liked me. I stayed late for every club I could join just to avoid going home. The librarian let me help shelve books after school. Sometimes I'd stay until closing. The silence between books felt kinder than my own house. Mrs. Harper, the librarian, noticed. "You don't seem in a hurry to leave." I lied. "I just love books." She smiled. "I think you love peace." I almost cried. Because someone saw me? Mom hated that too. She accused me of trying to embarrass her. You make people think you're abused. I'm not. Then stop acting pathetic. I like reading. No, you like attention. Everything somehow became my fault. When I was 14, everything exploded. It started with something unbelievably stupid. $50? Mom couldn't find $50 she'd left in her purse. She searched the house, asked Noah, asked herself out loud, then looked directly at me. You took it. I didn't. Don't lie. I swear. She slapped me before I finished the sentence. It wasn't the first time, but it was the hardest. My ear rang. I tasted blood. I didn't take it. You've always been a liar. Grandma happened to arrive 10 minutes later. She saw my face. What happened? I disciplined my daughter. For what? She stole from me. Grandma looked at me. I shook my head. Just once. Tiny. Almost invisible. She believed me immediately. Linda. What? You didn't even ask questions. I know my daughter. Grandma answered quietly. No. You never have. The room froze. Mom's eyes narrowed. You think I'm a bad mother? I think you're angry at the wrong child. I saw something dangerous flash across Mom's face. Pure hatred. Not toward me, toward Grandma. That argument lasted an hour. Doors slammed. Voices echoed through the house. When Grandma finally left, Mom didn't speak to me. She simply looked. Cold. Calculating. That expression terrified me more than screaming ever had, because it meant she was planning something. I just didn't know what. 2 weeks later, she made her move. I came home from school. My bedroom was empty. Completely empty. No clothes, no books, no photos, nothing. I thought we'd been robbed. Then Mom walked into the doorway. Pack what's left. What? You're leaving. I laughed nervously, thinking it was some horrible joke. I'm serious. Where am I going? I don't care. I live here. Not anymore. The floor seemed to disappear beneath me. I didn't steal your money. I know. I blinked. What? I found it. She opened a kitchen drawer. The missing $50 sat inside. I misplaced it. Relief flooded through me for exactly 1 second. So, she interrupted. But I realized something. What? I don't want you here anymore. Those words didn't even make sense. What are you talking about? You're poison. I'm your daughter. No. She stepped closer. You're the reason this family is miserable. I couldn't breathe. Noah deserves a peaceful home. I love Noah. You ruin everything you touch. Every sentence landed like another brick on my chest. I have nowhere to go. That's not my problem. You can't kick out a 14-year-old. She smiled. It wasn't happiness. It was victory. Watch me. That night, she drove me across town, not to a shelter, not to Grandma's, not to another relative. She stopped outside a state youth assistance office. You'll tell them you don't want to come home. What? If you don't. She looked directly into my eyes. You'll never see Noah again. I don't understand. You wanted attention. She opened my door. Now you have it. I sat frozen. Audrey. Silence. Audrey. She grabbed my backpack, threw it onto the sidewalk, and drove away. I chased the car for almost 50 feet, barely wearing a jacket, crying so hard I couldn't see. She never looked back. Not once. Inside the office, I couldn't even speak. A social worker wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. What happened? I stared at the floor. Hours passed before I whispered, My mom doesn't want me. The woman looked heartbroken. What about your father? He's dead. Grandparents? I thought about Grandma. I almost said her name. Then I remembered Mom's threat. You'll never see Noah again. I don't have anyone. It was the biggest lie I'd ever told, and it changed everything. The next morning, Mom had already called everyone. She told relatives I'd packed a bag. She told neighbors I'd screamed that I hated the family. She told Grandma I'd run away after stealing money. Every single part of it was a lie, but she spoke first. People believed her. Grandma tried calling. The shelter wouldn't confirm where I was. Child protection became involved. Court paperwork started. Mom insisted she'd begged me to come home. She cried. Neighbors comforted her. Church members brought casseroles. Everyone praised her strength. My poor Linda. What a heartbreaking daughter. I don't know how she's surviving. Meanwhile, I cried myself to sleep on a cot beside strangers, completely alone, and somewhere across town. My own mother was being treated like the victim. The first night at the emergency youth shelter, I didn't sleep. Not because of the unfamiliar room, not because of the other girls crying quietly behind thin curtains, because every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing my mother's last words. "You're the reason this family is miserable." People like to believe that words can't physically hurt you. They're wrong. My chest felt tight for weeks, like someone had tied a rope around my ribs and kept pulling. Every breath reminded me that I had been discarded, not lost, not abandoned by circumstance, thrown away. The shelter smelled like industrial detergent and old coffee. Every morning began at 6:30. Breakfast was powdered eggs, burnt toast, and silence. Most of the kids there had stories no 14-year-old should ever have. Some had bruises they couldn't hide. Some had parents in prison. Some had simply stopped talking altogether. I didn't think I belonged there. I kept telling myself this had to be temporary. Mom would calm down. Grandma would find me. Someone would realize the truth. Surely adults didn't just believe obvious lies. I still believed grown-ups always did the right thing. That illusion didn't survive long. A caseworker named Denise became responsible for me. She was kind without being overly cheerful, the sort of person who understood that fake optimism could feel insulting. One afternoon, she sat across from me with a thick folder. "Audrey, I'd like to ask you a few questions." I nodded. "Did your mother ever physically hurt you?" My throat tightened. I remembered the slap over the missing $50, the belt when I forgot to fold laundry, the wooden spoon she'd broken across my leg when I was 11. But somehow, saying those things aloud felt like betraying my own family. "No." Denise didn't look convinced. "Did she yell?" "Sometimes." "How often?" "I don't know." "Every week?" I stared at my hands. "Every day." She wrote something down. "Why did you leave home?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because the truth sounded impossible. My mother simply didn't want me anymore. Who would believe that? Instead, I whispered. "We argued." "What about?" "I don't remember." It was another lie. Not because I wanted to protect Mom, because I still couldn't process what she'd done. When trauma happens suddenly, your brain protects itself by blurring the edges. Reality feels unreal. I kept expecting to wake up. 3 weeks later, Denise returned looking frustrated. "Your mother says she begged you to come home." My stomach dropped. "She... what?" "She says you refused." I stared at her. "That's not true." "It isn't." For the first time since arriving there, I actually spoke with emotion. "No." "What happened?" Words spilled out faster than I could stop them. "She drove me there. She told me to get out. She said she didn't want me. She found the money. She admitted I didn't steal it. I never ran away." The room became very quiet. Denise stopped writing. "Audrey, please believe me." "I do." Those 3 words almost broke me, because they were the first time any adult besides Grandma had said them. I burst into tears so violently I couldn't breathe. Denise came around the desk and hugged me. It was the first hug I'd received in nearly 5 years. I didn't know what to do with my arms. An investigation followed. Child Protective Services interviewed everyone: neighbors, teachers, family members, my mother, grandma. The problem with emotional abuse is that it rarely leaves photographs. There are no broken bones, no hospital records, only memories, and memories lose against confident lies. Mom arrived dressed in soft blue, minimal makeup, eyes red from what everyone assumed had been crying. She spoke calmly. "I love my daughter." I begged her to come home. She's always been difficult. Every sentence sounded reasonable, measured, practiced. She never raised her voice, never lost her temper. She even cried at exactly the right moments. I later learned people like her do that naturally. They're performers, and every audience becomes a jury. Then they interviewed me. I was 14, shaking, wearing donated clothes that didn't quite fit. Every answer sounded uncertain. I think. I remember. Maybe. Compared to my mother's confidence, I looked unreliable. The case ended with insufficient evidence. Officially, no abuse could be proven. Unofficially, everyone chose a version of events, and hers was easier to believe. A month later, I entered foster care. The Henderson family. Mark and Susan. Two biological sons already in college. A yellow Labrador named Daisy. A quiet neighborhood where nobody screamed. The first week felt wrong. Susan knocked before entering my room. Mark asked what foods I liked. They apologized if dinner wasn't exactly how I preferred it. I kept waiting for the trap. There had to be one. Nobody stayed kind forever. Right? One evening, Susan accidentally dropped a plate. It shattered across the kitchen floor. I froze. Instinctively, I backed against the wall, heart racing, waiting for someone to start yelling. Instead, Mark laughed. "Well, there goes our favorite plate." Susan rolled her eyes. I hated that plate anyway. Then they both laughed harder. Just laughed. I stood there confused. "You okay, Audrey?" I couldn't answer, because in my house, broken dishes meant someone was getting hit. That night, I cried into my pillow for almost an hour. Not because I was sad, because I realized my childhood hadn't been normal. Still, healing wasn't immediate. Every compliment made me suspicious. Every act of kindness felt temporary. If Susan bought me a sweater, I'd wonder what she'd expect in return. If Mark praised my report card, I'd assume disappointment was coming next. Trauma teaches you to distrust comfort. Comfort always came before punishment. At least it used to. School became easier. Life didn't. Rumors had spread far beyond my hometown. Social media wasn't as massive then as it is today, but Facebook existed. Relatives posted vague messages, praying for broken families. Some children don't appreciate sacrifice. Parents deserve respect. Everyone knew who they meant. No names were necessary. Aunt Karen commented beneath one post. "Linda did everything she could," my cousin replied. "Some kids are just born selfish." I read every comment, every single one. I wanted to type the truth. I never did. Who would have believed me? Grandma never stopped searching. I learned that years later. At the time, I thought she'd abandoned me too, because Mom told everyone I refused contact. She intercepted letters, blocked phone calls, even returned birthday cards unopened. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was silence, the worst kind. When I turned 16, Denise visited again. She'd changed apartments but still checked on me occasionally. "You've grown." I smiled politely. "You look happier." "I guess." She hesitated. "I shouldn't tell you this?" My stomach tightened. "What?" "I saw your mother recently." My heart instantly sped up. "She asked about you?" "Really?" Denise nodded. But, but what? She asked whether you'd ever admitted you lied. The room felt colder. Lied about what? About being forced out. I couldn't even speak. Denise looked genuinely angry. She still tells everyone you chose to leave. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because I suddenly understood something terrifying. My mother actually believed her own version now. She had repeated it so many times. It had become real inside her head. That realization scared me more than anything she'd ever done, because you can't reason with someone who has rewritten reality. High school graduation arrived. The Hendersons cheered louder than anyone. Susan cried. Mark embarrassed me by taking 200 pictures. I smiled for the camera. But afterward, I secretly looked toward the parking lot. Just once, wondering whether Grandma had somehow found me. She hadn't. Neither had Noah. Neither had anyone from my old life. I drove home with the Hendersons, smiling, then cried alone that night, because every milestone reminded me of who wasn't there. At 18, I aged out of foster care. Most kids panic. I didn't. For the first time in years, my future belonged to me. Community college, part-time bookstore job, tiny apartment with unreliable heating, secondhand furniture, instant noodles. I loved every second of it. No screaming, no slammed doors. Freedom has a strange sound. It's unbelievably quiet. I threw myself into work. Books became my career. Eventually, I transferred to a university, studied archival science. People always asked why. The answer embarrassed me, because I wanted to preserve truth. Documents couldn't lie. Letters couldn't change their stories years later. Records stayed records. Maybe I became obsessed because my own history had been stolen from me when I was 22. I finally searched my family's names online. Curiosity defeated fear. Mom looked exactly the same. She'd become active in church, volunteered, organized charity drives. People called her inspirational. One article quoted her, "Family is everything." I nearly threw my laptop across the room. Then I saw Noah. He was 20 now, smiling beside her, taller than Dad had been, my little brother. Except, he wasn't little anymore. I stared at that picture for almost an hour, wondering whether he hated me, whether he'd been told I abandoned him, whether he even remembered the sister who used to read him bedtime stories before Mom decided I no longer belonged. I almost sent him a message. I typed one, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. What could I possibly say? Hi, I didn't actually abandon you. It sounded pathetic. So I closed the page. Life slowly became good. Not perfect, good. I made friends who felt like family. I met coworkers who celebrated my birthday. I adopted a rescue cat named Oliver. For the first time, I experienced ordinary happiness. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. My phone rang from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. Hello? A weak elderly voice spoke. Audrey? Yes? It's Margaret. I searched my memory. Nothing. I'm sorry. I was your grandmother's neighbor. My heartbeat stopped. Grandma. I've been trying to find you for months. My hands began shaking. Why? Silence. Then she whispered the words that turned my entire world upside down. Your grandmother is dying. I don't remember hanging up. One moment I was sitting at my desk in the university archives, carefully cataloging century-old letters. The next, I was standing in the staff restroom, gripping the sink so hard my knuckles had turned white. Grandma, dying. For 12 years, I had convinced myself she had forgotten me, that maybe she believed Mom's story, that maybe it hurt too much to keep looking. Now an elderly neighbor I'd never met was telling me she'd been searching for me. I felt sick. Not because of what I had learned, because of everything I had lost. 12 birthdays, 12 Christmases, 12 chances to hug the only person who had ever made me feel safe. Gone. Because of one lie. I left work immediately. The drive back to my hometown took nearly 4 hours. Every mile felt heavier than the last. The closer I got, the tighter my chest became. Nothing had changed. The same gas station, the same church. The same faded water tower that welcomed visitors. It was like driving straight into 14-year-old Audrey's worst nightmare. Except now I was 26. Old enough to understand exactly what had been stolen from me. Margaret met me outside a modest brick house 2 streets away from my grandmother's. She had gentle eyes and silver hair tied into a loose bun. The moment she saw me, she started crying. "You look just like your father." No one had ever said that to me before. She hugged me without asking. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" "For believing I had more time." She invited me inside. Tea sat untouched on the table. Beside it, a cardboard box. Old, worn, carefully taped shut. "What's that?" She sighed. "Your grandmother asked me to keep it." "For me?" Margaret nodded. "She told me if anything happened before she found you." My knees weakened. "I was to make sure this reached you." I slowly opened the box. Inside were 12 years of my life. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, photographs, letters, tiny wrapped gifts with faded ribbons. Every single one had my name written in Grandma's familiar handwriting. "To Audrey, wherever you are." My vision blurred. I picked up the oldest envelope. It had never been mailed. The stamp wasn't even attached. Inside, Grandma had written, "Sweetheart, your mother says you don't want to see me. I don't believe that. If you're reading this someday, know that I never stopped loving you." The paper shook in my hands. I reached for another, then another. Each year, the handwriting became shakier. Each letter carried the same message. "I'm still looking. I know you didn't leave without a reason. I'll keep waiting. Please don't give up on us." By the final letter, the ink wandered across the page as if her hands could barely hold the pen. "If I don't get to see you again, promise me one thing." I couldn't breathe. "Don't let the truth die with me." Margaret quietly placed something else on the table, a leather-bound journal. She kept notes. Notes? Everything your mother said. "What do you mean?" Margaret opened the journal. Every page contained dates, phone calls, visits, arguments. My grandmother had documented everything. "Linda claims Audrey refuses all contact. Called Children's Services again. Requested visitation. Denied. Neighbor saw Linda returning unopened mail. Then, one entry stopped me cold. October 14th. Found birthday card addressed to Audrey in Linda's trash bin. Still sealed." My hands trembled. Grandma had known. Not guessed. Known. "I need to see her." Margaret lowered her eyes. "You can." Hope surged through me. "She's at St. Matthew's Hospice." But, she doesn't remember every day anymore. Alzheimer's. The word hit me like another loss. 12 years. And now the disease had stolen what little time remained. Hospice was unbearably quiet. Machines hummed softly. The air smelled of antiseptic and wilted flowers. A nurse led me to room 14. I almost couldn't walk inside. Grandma looked impossibly small. Her once bright silver hair had thinned. Her hands, the same hands that used to braid my hair, looked paper-thin beneath the blanket. She was asleep. I sat beside her, not knowing whether she'd recognize me. After a few minutes, her eyes slowly opened. They wandered around the room, then settled on my face, for several agonizing seconds. Nothing. Then, her lips trembled. "Audrey?" I burst into tears. "It's me." She reached toward my face with shaking fingers. "I told them." Her voice cracked. "I told them. I know. They wouldn't listen. I know." She smiled, the same smile from my childhood. My girl came home. Those were the last completely clear words she ever spoke to me. Over the next 3 days, I barely left her room. Sometimes she remembered everything. Sometimes she believed I was 14 again. Sometimes she asked where Dad was. Sometimes she stared through me. Each clear moment felt like a miracle. During one of them, she squeezed my hand. "Promise me." "I promise." "No." She smiled faintly. "I haven't told you yet." I laughed through tears. "Okay." She became serious. "Truth doesn't always win quickly." I nodded. "But lies always demand maintenance." She paused to catch her breath. "The truth only has to exist." Those words stayed with me, because they explained my mother perfectly. She had spent 12 years feeding the same lie, protecting it, adjusting it, repeating it. Meanwhile, the truth had simply waited. On the fourth morning, Grandma slipped away peacefully. I was holding her hand. The nurse quietly confirmed what I already knew. Everything became strangely silent. I didn't scream, didn't collapse. I simply kissed her forehead and whispered, "You were never wrong about me." The funeral was scheduled for the following Saturday. Margaret hesitated before asking, "Will you go?" I looked toward the window. "My mother will be there." "I know. So will everyone else." "They should." I understood what she meant. For 12 years, my mother had controlled the room. Maybe, just maybe, the room was about to change. I spent the next several days reading every letter, every journal entry, every note. There were dozens of them. Grandma had become meticulous. She kept copies of legal requests, returned mail, church bulletins, calendar entries documenting every attempt she'd made to reach me. One envelope contained photographs. I frowned. They showed my mother's kitchen table, covered in unopened envelopes, everyone addressed to me. "When were these taken?" Margaret answered quietly. "I took them." "What?" "Your grandmother asked me to." "Why?" "Because she knew someday someone would question her memory." I stared at her. "So she gathered proof." Margaret nodded. "Your grandmother was many things?" A small smile appeared. "But she was never foolish." Then came the biggest discovery. Hidden beneath the journal was a voice recorder. Old-fashioned, battery-operated. A piece of masking tape read, "Conversation with Linda." My pulse quickened. I pressed play. Static. Then voices. Grandma's. And my mother's. Linda sounded irritated. "You need to stop looking." "I know, Audrey." "You don't." "I know she wouldn't disappear." Then, the sentence that changed everything. My mother's voice. Cold. Clear. Without hesitation. "She didn't disappear." I froze. The recording continued. "I made sure she couldn't come back." Grandma gasped. "What did you do?" "Exactly what I should have done years ago." Click. The recording ended. I replayed it. Again. And again. Maybe there was context. Maybe I'd misunderstood. There wasn't. Those 9 words were enough. Not a confession to a crime, but a confession to a lie. For the first time in 12 years, I held something my mother couldn't explain away. Evidence. Real evidence. Anger arrived differently than I expected. I thought I'd want to scream, confront her immediately. Instead, I became calm. Almost frighteningly calm, because revenge fueled by rage burns too fast. Revenge built on patience lasts forever. I wasn't interested in humiliating my mother for one afternoon. I wanted the truth to become permanent, exactly as her lie had been. The funeral guest list spread through town quickly. Nearly everyone planned to attend. Church members, neighbors, old teachers, relatives, people who had comforted my mother for years, people who had called me selfish, people who had pitied the woman who had thrown away her own daughter. The same audience. Different story. The funeral director called me 2 days beforehand. Your grandmother left specific instructions. For me? Yes. He sounded surprised. She requested that after the family speeches. He cleared his throat. You be allowed to speak. My heart skipped. My mother knows? No. A strange smile slowly spread across my face. For 12 years, my mother believed she controlled every conversation. She had no idea. The final word had never belonged to her. It belonged to Grandma. And in just 48 hours, everyone in that church would finally hear mine. The morning of my grandmother's funeral was gray, not stormy, not dramatic. Just the kind of dull, overcast sky that makes the entire world feel quieter than usual. I parked 3 blocks away from the church. Not because I had to, because I needed the walk. Each step gave me another few seconds to steady my breathing. The leather folder in my hands felt heavier than it should have. Inside were copies of Grandma's journal, photographs, the returned letters, and the voice recorder. Not weapons. Evidence. For 12 years, my mother had relied on one simple truth. People believe the first story they hear. Today, they were finally going to hear the second. As I reached the church doors, conversations drifted toward me. Poor Linda. She took such good care of Evelyn. I can't imagine losing both a mother and a daughter. That last sentence almost made me laugh. Losing a daughter? No. She had thrown one away. There's a difference. The sanctuary looked almost exactly as I remembered from childhood. The polished wooden pews, the stained glass windows casting soft colors across the floor, the scent of lilies. Grandma loved lilies. I stood quietly near the back. No one recognized me at first. Then an elderly woman turned. Her eyes widened. Audrey? The whisper spread like a breeze through tall grass. Heads turned, one after another. People stared. Some looked confused. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked as though they had seen a ghost. Then, my mother turned around. For a split second, her face emptied completely. No sadness, no anger, just pure shock. She hadn't expected this. Not after 12 years. She recovered quickly. Of course she did. She always recovered quickly. She walked toward me wearing black, elegant, perfectly pressed. Her expression softened just enough for everyone watching. Audrey. Her voice sounded warm, almost affectionate. I've missed you. The performance had begun. I simply looked at her. Didn't hug her, didn't smile, didn't answer. The silence unsettled her far more than an argument would have. She leaned closer. We shouldn't do this today. This? She lowered her voice. Whatever you're planning. I blinked. I came to bury Grandma. She searched my face, trying to read me, trying to calculate, trying to determine how much I knew, for the first time in my life. She couldn't. The service began. The pastor spoke beautifully about Grandma's kindness, her patience, her generosity. Every word was true. Then family members were invited to speak. My mother stood first. Naturally, she walked to the podium with practiced grace. I lost not only my wonderful mother. She paused dramatically. But many years ago, I also lost my daughter. Several people nodded sympathetically. She continued. I've spent 12 years praying that Audrey would find peace. I watched her carefully. Not a tremor. Not a hesitation. She had told this story so many times that it flowed effortlessly. I forgive her. Another pause. I always have. A few people wiped away tears. I felt strangely detached. Almost like I was watching an actress perform someone else's life. She finished to quiet applause, then sat down. Without looking at me, she thought she had won. Again. The funeral director quietly approached the podium. There is one final speaker? My mother frowned. She hadn't expected another name. He looked directly at me. By Evelyn Collins's written request. A ripple of confusion spread through the church. Her granddaughter, Audrey Collins. You could have heard a pin drop. I walked slowly to the podium, not because I wanted drama, because my legs suddenly felt weak. I looked at Grandma's casket, then at the hundreds of faces staring back at me. Many of them had believed the worst about me for more than a decade. I took one slow breath. My name is Audrey. A nervous laugh escaped someone in the back. As most of you know, I paused. Apparently, I ran away. A few uncomfortable smiles appeared. My mother folded her hands tightly in her lap. I've heard that story for 12 years. I looked toward her. It's interesting. Another pause. Because I don't remember running. The room became completely silent. I remember being 14. I remember being accused of stealing $50. I remember my mother finding that money. I remember her admitting I was innocent. Several heads turned toward Linda. And then, my voice remained calm. I remember being driven to a youth assistance office. I remember being told to get out of the car. I remember watching my mother drive away. Someone gasped. My mother stood abruptly. That's enough. The funeral director gently stepped in front of her. My mother has spent 12 years telling everyone I abandoned my family. I opened the leather folder. My grandmother spent those same 12 years documenting the truth. I held up one of the letters. This is my 16th birthday card. Another. My 18th. Another. My 21st. I never received any of them. I placed the stack on the podium. My grandmother never stopped writing. The church had become so quiet that I could hear someone crying 3 rows back. Mom finally spoke. She's confused. I looked at her. No. I pulled out the photographs Margaret had taken. These were found in your kitchen. I held them up. They show unopened letters addressed to me. People leaned forward. One woman actually stood to get a better look. They were never mailed. Mom's face lost its color. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then I reached into the folder one final time. The recorder. A tiny plastic device. Hardly anyone even noticed it. Until I pressed play. Static filled the church. Then Grandma's familiar voice echoed through the speakers. Several people smiled sadly. Then came my mother's voice. Cold. Clear. Undeniable. She didn't disappear. The room froze. Another second. I made sure she couldn't come back. Silence. Absolute silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Even the pastor looked stunned. The recording clicked off. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The truth had spoken for itself. My mother stared at me in disbelief. Then at the recorder. Then at the congregation. For the first time in my entire life. She had no script. No. She shook her head. That's edited. Her voice cracked. She took it out of context. Someone asked quietly. What context? She looked around desperately. No answer came. Another relative spoke. You said Audrey left. Another. You said she stole from you. Someone near the front whispered, Oh my God. An elderly man stood. I remember comforting you. Another woman started crying. I told my children she was ungrateful. Every sentence became another crack in the foundation of my mother's carefully built image. Then something happened that I hadn't expected. My brother Noah stood up. Slowly. He looked older than the photographs. Broader shoulders. Same eyes. Dad's eyes. He turned toward Mom. Is it true? She reached for his arm. Noah. Did you lie to me? Her lips trembled. I was protecting you. From what? Silence. From my sister? He looked at me for the first time. Really looked. Tears filled his eyes. I thought. His voice broke. I thought you left because you didn't love me. My heart shattered. I never stopped loving you. He covered his face with both hands. I waited every birthday. He laughed through tears. I kept thinking. His shoulders shook. This would be the year you'd come home. I couldn't stop crying anymore. Neither could he. 12 years. Gone. Because one woman couldn't admit the truth. The funeral ended without anyone speaking to my mother. People simply walked away. Not dramatically. Quietly. One by one. The sympathy she had collected for 12 years disappeared in a single afternoon. Not because I destroyed her reputation, because she had built it on a lie. Outside the church, Aunt Karen approached me first. She couldn't meet my eyes. "I owe you an apology." I nodded. She cried harder. "I should have asked questions." "Yes." I believed her. "I know. I failed you." Those 3 words meant more than any elaborate speech, because they were honest, unlike the ones I'd heard growing up. Soon others came. Former neighbors, teachers, church members. Some apologized. Some simply hugged me. Some admitted they had always felt something about my mother's story never quite made sense. Fear had kept them quiet. Now the evidence had set them free, too. My mother tried calling me that evening. 31 missed calls, then messages. "Please let me explain. You misunderstood. We both made mistakes." That last one almost made me laugh. We? No. There had never been a we. There had been a child. And there had been the adult who chose to destroy that child's life. I never answered. Not once. The weeks that followed were strangely peaceful. People in town stopped inviting my mother to charity events. The church quietly removed her from several volunteer positions. Not out of revenge, out of trust. People realized they no longer knew who she really was. She had spent years presenting herself as a grieving, abandoned mother. Now they questioned everything. Noah called me a month later. Our first real conversation lasted nearly 6 hours. We talked about Dad, Grandma, his childhood, my foster family, the birthdays we'd both spent wondering about each other. There were awkward silences, painful gaps, years we could never recover. But there was also something stronger than anger. Choice. We chose to become siblings again. Slowly. Honestly. Without our mother's version of the world standing between us. A few months later, Margaret gave me one final envelope. Grandma had written it only weeks before she died. Across the front were 4 simple words. "Open after the funeral." Inside, her handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. "My sweet Audrey, if you're reading this, then the truth finally found daylight. I always believed it would. Not because lies are weak, but because good people eventually grow tired of carrying them. Don't spend the rest of your life hating your mother. Hate keeps you tied to the person who hurt you. Instead, live so well that her lie becomes the least interesting part of your story." By the time I reached the end of the letter, tears blurred every word. Grandma had given me one final gift. Permission. Not to forget. Not to forgive blindly. But to move forward. Today, I'm 26. I still work preserving historical records. Funny, isn't it? I spend my days protecting documents so that the truth survives long after people are gone. Sometimes I think that's exactly where I was always meant to end up, because I know what happens when records disappear, when letters are hidden, when one person controls the story. Truth becomes homeless, until someone finally gives it a place to live. For 12 years, my mother convinced an entire town that I had run away. She won their sympathy, their admiration, their trust. I never took any of that from her. The truth did. And unlike a lie, the truth never needed to be rehearsed. People sometimes ask me whether exposing my mother at my grandmother's funeral was worth it, whether I regret ruining her life. The answer surprises them. I didn't ruin her life. I ended a lie. There's a difference. For years, I thought revenge meant making someone hurt the way they hurt you. I imagined screaming, humiliating her, making her beg for forgiveness. But real revenge turned out to be something much quieter. It was walking into that church without hatred controlling me. It was letting my grandmother's voice speak instead of my anger. It was refusing to exaggerate, insult, or invent anything. I simply told the truth, and for someone who had spent 12 years hiding from it, that was more devastating than any revenge I could have planned. The hardest part wasn't confronting my mother, it was grieving the life I never got to live. The birthdays with grandma, watching Noah grow up, family dinners that should have existed but didn't. No victory can give those years back. Justice doesn't erase loss, it only acknowledges that the loss was real. Noah and I still talk every week. Some conversations are easy, some are painfully awkward. We're learning each other as adults instead of siblings who grew up together. Sometimes we laugh about how we both inherited Dad's terrible sense of direction. Sometimes we cry over memories we should have shared. Healing isn't a single moment, it's a decision you make over and over again. As for my mother, I haven't spoken to her since the funeral, not because I wake up angry every day, because peace requires boundaries. I genuinely hope she someday faces the truth, not for my sake, but for her own. Until then, that chapter of my life remains closed. Grandma once told me that lies need constant protection, but the truth only needs patience. She was right. My truth waited 12 years. And when it finally arrived, it didn't have to shout. It only had to be heard. If this story stayed with you, let me know in the comments. Do you think Audrey did the right thing by revealing the truth at her grandmother's funeral? Or should she have confronted her mother privately? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy emotional family drama, betrayal, and satisfying revenge stories like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There are many more unforgettable stories waiting for you in the next video.